Did you know there was a second PlayStation Vita? Did you know there was a first? Today I want to talk about one of Sony's last-ditch efforts to make the Vita work. This is the PlayStation Vita Slim. Okay, well, technically, I don't think it was actually officially called the PS Vita Slim. It's very similar to how the various different models of the PSP were referred to by the thousands. Yeah, the PSP 2000, 3000. So at least with the PSPs, it kind of makes more sense to refer to them by their actual, like, product code name, I guess. With the Vita, yeah, you can technically call this the PS Vita 2000, but at the same time, like, how else are we gonna get confused by this? With the PSP, calling the PSP 2000 the PSP Slim. Firstly, that don't make no damn sense. That thing wasn't, like, significantly slim or anything. It was just a better functioning PSP. Second, this was the only other PS Vita that released, and it notoriously had a slimmer design. So, PS Vita Slim it is. I remember them announcing this. They announced it in Japan first, right alongside the PS Vita TV. It's interesting why they did that. I believe the PS Vita TV coincided with this because it seems like they were designed in tandem with each other. It's like, hey, let's redesign the PS Vita to be slimmer, and then let's use those internals to create a little tiny set-top box. But it's strange because the PSP 2000 actually introduced, like, AV output. You could plug a cable into your PSP and then output the video to a monitor. And the PS Vita notoriously never officially had that. So at this time, they finally introduced, hey, you can finally play PS Vita games on your TV, but you have to buy a separate set-top box to do it, and, like, half the games don't work. But this slim redesign actually addressed a fair amount of the complaints against the original PS Vita model. So, one, they were able to slim it down. Naturally, they don't unofficially call it the PS Vita Slim for nothing. I will definitely say, even though the original Vita does have a fair amount of weight to it, and it's definitely kind of chunky in the hands, this has always been one of the most premium feeling handheld consoles ever. And I think its larger size definitely does help with that. Though I wouldn't say the Slim feels cheaper by comparison. Just a bit different, I would say. And to me, it feels like they kind of got rid of the stuff that didn't matter in the slightest on the original Vita. Though I am devastated to say the PS Vita's accessory port was taken out of the PS Vita Slim. Oh my god, think of all the memories we shared together. Yeah, the thing was never fucking used. It's so funny looking back at this era of hardware where they would just create these proprietary-ass ports and then do nothing with them. It's like how the Wii U gamepad had this port at the bottom. And honestly, I'm kind of stumped as to what the hell kind of accessory they would have even made for this port up there. The most immediate example I can think of is how the PSP had the camera attachment you'd pop on the top. But the PS Vita already has a front-facing camera and a back-facing camera, so it's just like, okay, no camera there. And that's literally the only thing I could possibly even assume could go in here. And there's no reason for it to go in there. Okay, Sony removed a completely worthless fucking feature. How about a second one? No more 3G support. Rats! This was always kind of a curious inclusion with the original PS Vita, the fact that they had a 3G model that was $50 more expensive, connected with AT&T. Everybody loved that. And when I say love, you know I mean I'm completely untrustworthy, don't listen to me. You know, this whole partnership just kind of felt like Sony was throwing literally everything at the wall with the Vita. Just cram as much shit in this as possible to make it the most impressive product of all time or something. But Jesus Christ, you don't need 3G support in your handheld. I mean, that is a massive commitment. Not only are you actively deciding to buy the system that is $50 more expensive just to have a 3G enabled PS Vita, but on top of that, that's an extra data plan you need to care about, and you need to be actively buying games on the Vita that have online multiplayer that you would play on 3G cellular. And keep in mind, 3G. Fucking 3G. Do you remember 3G? It wasn't that fast. I just find pumping 3G support into the hardware just felt like a complete waste of time, energy, money, all of that. Listen, at the time, you could have bought a 3G or hell, even a 4G hotspot device for like a couple $100, oftentimes under $300 or so. Yeah, it was still pricey, but I'd rather pay for a data plan for that, and then I can use that across like all of my Wi-Fi devices instead of locking myself in to be like, oh yeah, I want the PS Vita with 3G, and it's only gonna have 3G speeds, and I have to worry about a goddamn data plan for my fucking PlayStation Vita, the thing that plays Little Deviants. So yeah, even though this box does specify this is Wi-Fi, you know, why would they even say that if they didn't offer a 3G model? But I'm sure they're referencing the fact that the original PS Vita had a 3G option, but this slim version never had a 3G model, primarily because that was a massive flop. Nobody was buying it. Nobody was using 3G on their Vita. Another massive change is actually the charging port. The Slim just uses a basic micro USB connection, while the original uses some proprietary ass, Sony ass, stupid ass charging ports. Obviously, being able to charge this with a micro USB cable is leagues more convenient and so much nicer, which is in addition to another fantastic new move. This has onboard storage. Oh boy! Yeah, one of the worst things about the Vita is that it had absolutely no onboard storage. You had to buy a fucking memory card for the thing to save any games. Absolutely ridiculous. It made it so then pretty much every PS Vita game's box had to have this memory required label on it. It's crazy. They're saying, hey, you need to buy a memory card for this, and this thing requires kilobytes. Like, it's not asking for much, but Sony just could not dare give you that space on the original Vita model. You had to buy one of their expensive ass memory cards. I just think it's crazy with all of the dumb crap they shoved into the Vita. A fucking back touchpad. I'm gonna be honest, I've gone through a lot of the Vita library. I haven't found a single game where this is used in an effective way. Like, it's almost always a pain when it's used. Even when I was playing the God of War collection, like, it has you hold down on the back touchpad to, like, talk to people or open up chests. That's not fun. But no, that was worth including in the whole thing, but not like literally a gigabyte of storage at least. Who cares? Yeah, that would absolutely be pitiful, but it's something at least. Well, thank God Sony got their heads out of their asses and they included storage space on the Vita Slim. 1 gigabyte. Yeah, it just has 1 gigabyte of onboard storage. I think that's still absolutely absurd. I feel like at this point, like, I don't know, 2, 4, 8 gigabytes? Come on, 8 gigabytes. Especially at this point, come on, Sony, you must have really wanted people to be like buying stuff digitally on the PlayStation Store. Especially during this era. I mean, the Vita was getting its ass handed to it by mobile gaming at the time. And you know, a big aspect of mobile gaming that was so beloved was the fact that you could just download a bunch of games onto your phone right then and there. Boom, it's all right there. The Vita couldn't do that out of the box. You had to buy a memory card. At the very least, the Vita Slim, you could download a couple of games on here, but that 1 gigabyte is definitely best reserved for saving games. But a very strange limitation that this system has is it doesn't allow you to use both the internal storage and memory card storage at the same time. So if you have content on the internal storage and then you put a memory card in, the Vita will not read what's on the internal storage. You have to take the memory card out for it to read what's on the internal storage, which is wildly bizarre. I've never seen anything like that. And I think that just shows that the Vita was probably built from the ground up with the idea that, yeah, there's no internal storage. But hey, as stupid as that is, that's still better than the original PS Vita. And hell, it seems that everything is better on the PS Vita Slim. I can't wait to turn it on to experience a definitively better PlayStation. Yeah, there had to be something wrong with this version, and that's the big thing. So the original PS Vita launched with an OLED screen, and my goodness, it was nice. OLED screens are notorious for having the deepest blacks you'll ever see in your life. Rich colors, everything just pops, it looks good. The PS Vita screen isn't the most high resolution thing in the world, but overall, everything just looked so vibrant on it. It was a very nice screen for a handheld gaming system. And the Vita Slim does not have that at all. It just has a basic LCD screen. Oh! Here's the thing. I see a lot of people questioning when they're looking to get into the Vita, whether or not to go for the original OLED model. And I will definitely say, this screen is better, but this screen isn't bad. I think that is an incredibly important thing to discuss here. Just because this screen isn't as good as the original Vita screen, that doesn't mean it's a bad screen. This is just a normal screen. It's not like, oh wow, this looks like shit oh, this sucks, this is unplayable. No, it's just undeniably this screen is better, but this screen does the job. It's a normal ass screen on a handheld. That's what it is. I'd honestly say that's kind of one of the only major things the original Vita has in favor of it compared to the Vita Slim. Outside of the fact, if you really like to fuck around with ports you can't use, or if you just really like this port because, like, I don't know, you're weird as fuck, or you have a humiliation fetish. I don't know. Point is, while I do still really enjoy the original model of the Vita, it definitely has a couple of weird quirks about it. And I think the PS Vita Slim does a lot to kind of rectify a lot of the problems that this original model had. And I think the overall feel is much better. The slimmer size and the overall refinements they did to the Vita Slim make it an overall better handheld, in my opinion. The original Vita still feels more premium, and a lot of that's because of the OLED screen, but I'd say also just the overall like silver trim and like, oh my god, the bigger touchpad on the back. Oh boy. Yeah, that was another thing they absolutely massacred on the Slim. The touchpad is slightly smaller. But I think the Vita Slim doesn't feel cheap or even really cheaper. It just feels a little different, but feeling different actually makes a major difference. It just feels good in the hands, and it feels like something that you can actually carry around with you and use as an actual handheld. When I was playing this earlier today, I was thinking like, damn, I kind of want to play the Vita a little bit more. I kind of want to use this as an excuse to play through a couple of games that I've been meaning to play. Made me miss handhelds that were just actual handhelds, that were actually portable. Like, I could fit this in my pocket. This, yeah, I could still do the same with it, but it's definitely a little bit chunkier, which makes that a bit more difficult. And it's really interesting how just a bit of a size difference makes a huge difference, because the Vita Slim, while it is smaller, it's not like that crazy. So overall, I think the Vita Slim is the best version of the Vita. It's a shame it's the Vita. Yeah, I only say that because it was too little too late. By the time this released in 2013 in Japan, and then here in North America around spring of 2014, the Vita just wasn't gonna bounce back. I mean, it did retain a very healthy community of die-hard fans who would always support the Vita whenever they could, because the Vita became very popular for indie games and a lot of Japanese games. But it felt like the Vita Slim was Sony's last major attempt to bring more of a mass market to the Vita. We can clearly see here, this was a bundle Sony launched with the Vita Slim's debut in North America, the Borderlands 2 bundle. These two games launched in May of 2014, kind of surrounding the Vita Slim's North American debut. Borderlands 2 was probably one of the last major AAA Western ports that hit the Vita. And then you also had Sony kind of doubling down on a lot of collections on the Vita. God of War had God of War 1 and 2. And then soon after, they put out the Sly Cooper trilogy on Vita, and then the Ratchet & Clank trilogy on Vita. Though, as you can see, this is a European copy because this never got a physical release here in North America, because I think around this time, things weren't looking too great. Definitely kind of a last-ditch effort. Sony kind of taking these collections that have already kind of released on PS3. You know, these are kind of variants of the PS3 HD collections of these franchises, and just kind of repurposing them for the Vita, just so then the Vita got some of their big IPs. You know, Borderlands 2 is a big deal, and seeing this on the Vita is pretty damn neat. It runs okay sometimes. Just oftentimes the frame rate gets a little weird, and a big problem I have with a lot of home console ports to the Vita is that it feels like they don't really optimize a ton for the Vita. I look at the menus and I'm like, god damn, I need a magnifying glass. This was not made for a screen this small. But while Sony, in quotes, tried to kind of save the Vita with this last-ditch effort, it wasn't really them trying. I think them trying would be making a new God of War for the Vita, making a new Sly Cooper for the Vita, putting money behind more AAA ports than just Borderlands 2. And listen, not saying they should have done that, because I do genuinely think by this point in the Vita's life, it was kind of all said and done. I think the concept of handheld gaming at the time was dominated by mobile gaming and Nintendo with the 3DS. And even then, the 3DS wasn't even doing as well as most of their other handhelds throughout the years. I think portable gaming got a shot in the arm with the release of the Nintendo Switch, and that's when we saw, I think, a lot of people return back to more dedicated handheld gaming. And it's a shame, because the Vita is such a special little device. It's still really fun to play these days, and it doesn't feel like it's aged really much at all. Even though the Nintendo Switch Switch 1 is more powerful than the PS Vita. The PS Vita being much smaller makes it honestly just as, if not more, impressive. I mean, Borderlands 2 is on the Vita, Borderlands 2 is on the Nintendo Switch. And yeah, it runs worth on the Vita, but do you see how small the Vita is? I think considering all that, the frame rate dips I get in Borderlands 2 on the Vita are far easier for me to disregard compared to frame rate dips I'd get of that game on the Switch 1. I definitely consider buying a Vita these days to be more of a novelty. You know, it's a very novel experience to play on this, but I do think most games that are really good on the Vita, you can play elsewhere. You can play on the Switch 1 or the Switch 2. And I think those are the far more lucrative platforms to buy. But damn it, guys, the Vita deserves respect. And if it wasn't for the Slim, it wouldn't have gotten any.